You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
You are listening to the #1 horse podcast in the world. Here is your entertaining look at the horse world and the people in it.
This is Ashley Winch in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you're listening to Horses in the Morning on the Horse Radio Network for Monday, July 15th, episode 3475 by WERM Flooring. Good morning, Horse World.
You have found Horses in the Morning on a Monday. You're in for an amazing horsey week of laughter, learning, and fun with Glenn and Jamie.
Dust off your helmets and sunscreen because we're saddling up for a summer special episode. We've got your horse covered from head to hoof with expert advice on keeping them cool, comfortable, and healthy all season long. First up, Steve Kraus, head of Farrier Services at Cornell University, joins us to dish on the best summertime hoof care tips. Then, Isabel, Holden, and Coach Jenn tackle those pesky coat issues. Sweet itch, hives, summer sores, you name it, they'll tame it. And finally, Dr. Julie Bullock, DVM, dives deep into heat stress, helping you keep your equine friend feeling their best all summer long. So grab a cool drink, settle in, and get ready for a summer-sized dose of horse care knowledge. But first, a quick note from our title sponsor, WERM Flooring. Tired of leaky roofs and scorching temperatures in your trailer or RV? WERM Flooring's revolutionary seal and chill coating is the answer. This silicone-based barrier provides double protection. It stops leaks, and it beats the heat. Ditch temporary fixes. Seal and Chill offers long-lasting peace of mind with a professional application for a flawless finish. At only $7.50 per square foot, it's an investment in a happier trailer and a happier you, not to mention happier horses. Find a dealer near you today and keep your trailer cool, dry, and happy. Visit wormflooring.com. That's WERM flooring.com.
Well, we've got Steve Kraus, the head of Farrier Services at Cornell University. Hello, Steve.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I guess you guys all know what we're going to talk to Steve about. We're going to talk about hooves. So I'm going to ask you a question. It's just a random question. No knowledge, no necessary, I'm asking for a friend. What do you do for a horse that has a dang foot bruise that just will not go away? What is the best thing to do?
You're talking about a bruise on the sole, and if it won't go away, there may be an inside problem. To me, a bruise would, be a dark red spot on the sole.
Yeah. So my friend had the vet out, and the vet found the bruise and put the hoof testers on it, and just like, yep, it's right here. And so I've been like wrapping it and soaking it, and it's been about a week and a half. My friend, it's been about a week and a half.
The bruise itself is not going to disappear until the hoof grows out more, or the sole grows out more, because you have damaged tissue there. You have a bruise is usually the soft tissue between the coffin bone and the horny sole. So that is like a hemorrhage situation. So it takes time for the bruise to, heal over and move out of away from the sensitive sole.
Would you suggest
that's not going to go away away?
Would something that would support him and help him more it's on a hind foot on the outside, would putting shoes on be something you would recommend, or just let it happen?
Definitely getting some more what we call vertical depth with shoes, a boot, or of some sort would definitely help that horse be able to find some comfort anyway. But it's just like, it's no different than if somebody, if a horse bit you in the arm and bruised your muscle, takes a long time. You have a black and blue mark. It's the same thing. So It takes a while to replace the tissue to regenerate and replace.
Well, I will tell her that.
And if you've ever been bit in the arm by a horse, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sure do. So what we're going to talk a little bit about too is the hoof health and here I just moved to Oklahoma and we had, 6 months of rain, and now it's 6 months of completely dry, and trying to figure out how to manage hooves in extremely wet weather and then extremely dry weather. What are some tips that you would give us for wet, and then we'll talk about dry?
Okay, well, the two extremes of moisture are always difficult, because one of the biggest effects on hoof health and hoof quality is moisture conditions. So in wet weather, that constant wet weather is probably the toughest to deal with, because it actually softens the horny hoof wall and sole. So it deforms easier. It doesn't hold shoes as well. It breaks apart more. And the best thing, I guess, for that is to try and keep the horse out of a wet environment, which means if obviously you're not going to keep them in all the time, but if you can create better drainage in your pastures and paddocks, or don't have them turned out in a muddy area all the time. That's the worst for horses' feet, constant mud. But high humidity doesn't help either. So in South Florida during the winter, they have problems with high humidity in a place like that. And when I guess the only thing that could be worse than constant wet conditions is some of the summers we've had here up in upstate New York, where it rains for 2 weeks and then it dries up for 2 weeks, then it rains for 2 weeks. And feet are contracting and expanding and contracting and expanding, because that's what they do. They either fill up with more moisture, or they lose moisture and tighten up. So it's really, we're asking how to control the weather.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a difficult problem. And so you have to be flexible in your horse care.
So we've got them contracting and we've got them expanding, and is there any topical anything that I can put on my horse that's going to make a difference? Like there's the Rainmaker, and you think about putting Rainmaker on a horse's hoof when it's super dry. Is that all BS?
Right. Well, I think these things have a certain amount of help. Any type of coating that you could put on the outer wall of the horse's foot that will resist the excessive moisture can be of help. Some of the beeswax type hoof coatings that stick to the foot and don't have trapped bacteria in there. Tough Stuff, which puts a semi-permeable membrane on the horse and actually sheds water really well. But that has to be renewed at least once a week. And most of these things, the farrier might put it on, but the horse owner has to follow up once a week with it to maintain the coating. And so that could help. The other thing that I have found in farriers, again, in South Florida, in the moisture conditions, find that if you're shoeing these horses, if you hot fit the shoes on all these horses, you help tighten the foot up. You dry out a little excessive moisture with your hot fitting of the shoes, and you kill a lot of the fungi and bacteria that's ever present, that's trying to invade that hoof wall, which is quite weak when it's very moisture laden.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So hot shoeing is going to help. I feel like horses' feet grow, it seems to me, slower in the winter and faster in the summer. What are some appropriate shoeing or trimming cycles to kind of keep as a baseline?
Well, that is correct. And to the best of my knowledge, hoof growth tends to follow the length of day. So we're seeing now a reduction in hoof growth here at the end of August. And this is where we are in upstate New York, and the days are shorter. I get up early, and now it's a little dim when I'm getting up early, where it used to be quite bright. So so the hoof growth follows that cycle. It lags behind it. So we start seeing feet really start growing faster here in upstate New York in March, before there's really any pasture. So it's not the grass effect or anything, but it's the length of daylight has been increasing, and now it's been decreasing since the end of June. So there's a certain amount of cyclic stuff available to the horse that influences how fast hoof growth went. And on some horses, your shoeing cycle in the summer could be 4 to 5 weeks, and the same horse during the winter could be 6 to 8 weeks.
So basically, it seems like all that it concentrates on either growing hair or growing hoof. You're either going to get a winter coat
Correct.
or a new hoof. I never
it's
thought
very
of that.
Similar.
That's
right.
amazing.
So it follows that same idea.
Can I say light bulb
probably
moment?
Noticed,
Can I just put that out there?
Right? I mean, my gosh, that is a light bulb moment. I didn't know that it followed the light, and it's like it redirects it to the hair or the hoof. Sorry, Steve. We're just fascinated by that.
So you probably notice this time of year or into September, your horses are shedding a little bit here and there because they're preparing to grow a winter coat, especially in the northern climates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. That is fascinating, right, Jen? That's I never thought of that. So what are some, being that it is competition season most of the places around the world, are there any special things that you would recommend for people that are competing their horse to keep hoof health active?
Well, I think one of the things that my clients do on a regular basis over the years is they schedule their shoeing along with their competitions. So they keep the horses on the proper schedule, and so they're not entering a competition, for instance, at the end of a shoeing cycle, especially if you're endurance racing or anything that's really strenuous and everything. You want your horse to be the best he can be. Mm-hmm. And so that's what my clients do, is pay attention to their competition, event schedule, horse show schedule. And occasionally we may book appointments or tentatively book appointments like 3 cycles ahead, looking at that calendar. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you do make adjustments for various reasons. But if you really keep everything where it should be, then you have fewer problems like lost shoes or horses stumbling or just things that, are horseshoeing related, because you're keeping everything closer to the optimum.
Awesome. One of my favorite things to do is to go onto y'all's Facebook page and see the things that you post, Steve, and how fascinating and amazing the strides you guys are making in learning more and helping horses at your farrier school. So give a plug for the school and for your Facebook page and where people can get a hold of you.
Great. So we have the oldest continuing operating horseshoeing school that I know of in the United States. We're 105 years old, and we have the lowest student to instructor ratio. We only take 4 students at a time for 16 weeks, and it's a very comprehensive course. We teach the idea is to come out of here understanding and applying the basics well. Anything we can add on top of that, of some of the stuff you see on the Facebook page and the hospital cases and lame horses we work on, that's experience. That's great, but you're not ready to do that. But to be able to do a good job, understand the principles of trimming, fitting, and so on, anatomy and hoof diseases, conformation, that's what my students do real well with. And they continually tell me that all I'm doing is fixing the basics, which weren't done right, and the horses are going so much better. Mm-hmm. So visit us on our Facebook page, Cornell Farrier Program, and come and visit us here at Cornell if you're interested in that.
Fantastic. Well, Steve Kraus, head of Farrier Services at Cornell, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on.
There's more talk now than ever about the importance of probiotics in equine health. But not all probiotics are created equal. New Purina Systemic Supplement remains live and active after the pelleting process and throughout the digestive system, making it all the way to the hind gut. Systemic was designed to support normal recovery after exercise and occasional gastrointestinal stress. Whether you're using a probiotic now or not, it's time to try a live and active supplement from a name you trust. New Purina Systemic Probiotic.
And what is next on the docket, Leave?
You're ready to dive into like summer skin crud stuff that
I
also,
am.
yeah.
I
Okay.
am. As we record this show is a June show, as we mentioned at the opening. So most of the United States is well and truly into summer, with the exception of maybe Colorado, who's still getting snow. But the rest of us, it's summertime. It's sweaty. It's sticky. It's itchy. It's sunny. It's humid, etc. So please enlighten us.
Yeah, yes. So, most of the topics today I'm pulling from listener questions. People tag me on the Pro Equines Facebook group, and which is the Pro Equine Grooms group. And I have very specific questions about sweet itch. And so I think I'm going to start there because sweet itch is something that is not super, super common in the States. It's also called Queensland itch because in the Queensland area of Australia, some ridiculous number, like 30 to 40% of all horses there have this particular skin ailment. In the US, it's not that much, but it is high stress for a horse owner to have a horse with sweet itch because there is a lot of uncomfortable horse stuff going on. And in a nutshell, sweet itch is started with this little tiny gnat, the no-see-um. And the no-see-um will come and they'll bite your horse, typically on the dorsal side, which is the top side, like his rump, the saddle area, the neck, sometimes around the ears, sometimes the belly, but these bugs tend to stay away from the underside of your horse and the legs. And what happens is your horse says, wow, that's a tiny, tiny gnat, but I'm going to have this incredibly dramatic and greatly overreacting reaction to this bite. And your horse is going to get super itchy and he's going to start to then do whatever he can to get relief from the itch. And that's where you run into the problems, is that horses will literally rub themselves raw. It's bad. It's really bad. So there's some things that you really have to do as a horse owner. And one of them is to go back to what I call the barrier method. And I talk about the barrier method in terms of grooming a lot. Like you need to put a bunch of oil and protective things between your horse's coat and the environment. And it's the same thing for sweet itch. You have to basically, cocoon or bubble your horse away from these gnats. And there's a couple of ways to do that. Jenn, I'm sure you're familiar with fly sheets. You live where bugs are everywhere all year long. But the typical fly sheet doesn't have like leg closures and a full belly covering, and it doesn't go all the way up their head and neck and down, leaving little eye holes and then cover most of their muzzle. But you can get special sweet itch fly suits. Have you ever seen a horse?
Of those? Yes, it looks like something that a horse would wear if he was going to go for a moonwalk.
Yes, absolutely. And you'll notice that the legs are open because that's not where the bugs like to hang out. So basically, if you have a horse with sweet itch, like long before the bugs come out, he needs to start wearing this. The other thing you can do is start to transition your horse to different turnout times. So the gnats that cause the sweet itch are really active dawn and dusk. Your horse needs to be somewhere where the gnats are not. So like in a stall or a shelter with a fan like on full blast. If you can, if it's even possible, and I've seen this done before and it actually works out really, really well because the ventilation is maintained, but you can on a horse's stall or shelter, you can literally screen the entire thing to keep the bugs out. And you just have to create, if possible, a screened in area for your horse to live during the dawn and the dusk hours. The rest of the days, typically, you're going to be fine. And then you need to start to think about how you're going to help your horse not be so itchy, because that's truly where the problem is. And obviously, your vet's going to be a huge source of systemic medications and maybe some topical medications as well. There's lots of products that you can use. Shapley's has a great shampoo called Medicare. It's got the most amazing lemongrass and tea tree oil, which makes it a funny shade of green, but it also makes it just delightfully delicious smelling. But the lemongrass and the tea tree are really, really soothing to horses. So anytime you have a horse that's got like a sensitive skin coat, that's the kind of stuff you would want to use. So when you start to combine all those things together, you can really tackle sweet itch from a holistic approach. But it really boils down to is battle of the bugs, and you need to have those barriers between the bugs and your horse.
That's what it boils down to. Bug armor.
Bug armor, and your horse is going to look funny in his pasture mates. They're going to point and laugh at him, but too bad, so sad.
There you go.
Yeah. So another really common thing that I hear about from people is that like their horse's tail is really, really itchy, and they've started to rub the tail kind of usually towards the top of the tail, but on the tailbone. So you've got this really beautiful, long flowing tail. And then at the very top, usually about somewhere around eye level for us, you get sort of like these bald patches, right? So many different reasons for this. Now, everybody's favorite internet solution for this is Listerine. And I'm like,
yes, you do see that one a lot. Yes.
Yes. And I'm like, apparently we all have like the mintiest breath ever because we all have like, Costco size stores of Listerine around. But Listerine is great if it is a skin condition, like too much shampoo residue is left on your horse's tail that makes him a little itchy. Listerine's not going to do anything for pinworms. And we've talked about that on the show before, but as a quick and disgusting refresher, pinworms like live just in the very distal end of your horse's digestive system, like around his anus and just inside his rectum. And they come out at night. Like they literally just crawl their way out of your horse and lay their eggs around your horse's anus, like under his tail, which creates mega, mega itch. Listerine's not going to do anything for that. You're going to need to talk with your vet and get like a targeted dewormer that's going to take care of the pinworms. Or he might have a sheath or a set of udders that needs a little bit of attention there. So while tail rubbing is super and great, try Listerine, but know that unless you've narrowed it down to a shampoo residue problem, you're probably just throwing good mouthwash away. Make sense?
Good mouthwash away.
And I mean, I know it's not super expensive, but like, yeah. So the other thing to think about, especially in summer season, so I see this a lot too. Everybody wants homemade fly sprays because it's more quote unquote natural. And I'm like, great, I totally get it. If you have a source of essential oil that you trust, you could make your own fly spray or whatever. But also know that there are a lot of flies out there, including a lot of gnats, that are attracted to delicious smelling things. So, because they smell like flowers, right?
Oh, yeah. Maybe not lavender oil?
Yeah, lavender, some of this, not necessarily the citronellas, but some of the citrus oils and the other really common popular like eucalyptus oils that you see in recipes a lot for homemade fly sprays. Those actually attract a whole other like classification of insects. So you might be doing something for stable flies, but then you have this whole other swarm of stuff to deal with. So again, sometimes the barrier method is just the best. Yeah. One other thing that I see quite a bit in summer, hives. You ever seen a horse with hives?
Oh, it's sad.
It is. It kind of makes my heart ache a little bit because, well, one, I wonder how itchy they are. A lot of horses will get hives and they're not itchy at all. Some horses will get hives and like they'll just like completely just throw themselves against whatever they can to get some sort of relief. And here's the thing with hives. Very often they've popped up on your horse as a result of something that your horse has come into direct contact with, like, a new grooming product, or you borrowed somebody's brush accidentally and your horse didn't like that other horse's, fly spray or whatever. Maybe they've rolled in the pasture and they rolled on a weed that they don't like. So sometimes the hives also come from something that your horse has eaten, which, again, allergies, if you aren't aware of this, allergies can happen to you at any point in your life. Like tomorrow, I could suddenly be allergic to peanut butter. I would have a big problem with that because I love peanut butter. But just because your horse hasn't been allergic to X, Y, or Z in the past, he might come up being allergic to it in the future. But don't get all paranoid about that. Just deal with the hives at hand. If you come to the barn one day and your horse has all of these like little connect the dot constellation type patterns on his body, do give your vet a call. Most of the time, hives are completely benign. They go away. But sometimes hives can happen inside your horse, like inside his mouth, inside his throat.
Wow.
Yeah. So what does that interfere with? Horse's favorite thing to do, eat. Horse's second favorite thing to do, breathe. So you want to take hives seriously, but know that hopefully you'll be able to narrow down a cause and your horse is going to get some pretty instant relief. And your vet can absolutely help you with either topicals or systemic things to help the hives go away.
Yeah, hives are icky and scary, and because they can be from so many different things. And like you said, it's scary because like, okay, is there something going on the inside?
Right.
I don't know about. So yeah, that whole, take his vitals, maybe drop your vet a call, say, hey, my horse has some hives. Stay tuned.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing about hives is that you're going to have to like put on your like Sherlock Holmes hat and get like super Nancy Drew on it and try and narrow things down as to what it might be. And you're going to have to narrow things down into like, what have you put on your horse? What has your horse put on your horse? Meaning, what did he roll in? Is there new shavings, new bedding? Is there a new hay? Is there a new feed? You really kind of have to play a little detective-y there. All right, I got one more summer skin issue to talk about. And it's kind of my favorite one. No, that's not right. It's my summer skin issue that I'm most fascinated with because I'd only ever heard about it when I lived in California. I only heard about this happening on East Coast until I saw it in California and I was like, ooh, it's everywhere. It's a summer sore. Have you heard of these?
Oh, the bane of our existence here in Florida.
Yes. And just, again, a little gross out warning. I'm going to try and make this not super, super gross in how this works. But it's fly and worm related. And your horse, again, one more time being super, super, super dramatic and overreacting. But basically, horses have this stomach worm, the Habronema worm, and it's actually an entire genus of intestinal parasites the genus is Habronema. But anyway, these worms live in some horses, and their larvae is actually released in a horse's manure. Instead of the eggs, it's actually the larvae that are released in the manure. And then here you come along with the stable fly. The stable flies will land on the manure and eat these larvae, which is, I guess, a pretty, common thing for flies to eat. Sounds gross to me, but whatever. Now, this fly, he's going to buzz around. He's going to land on your horse. Maybe he lands on a small cut or a small, like especially in South Florida, if there's like a little mud fever or scratches going on, a fly could land on one of those little scabs or sores from dew poisoning. And then what happens is that fly now deposits kind of like part of his fly and the worm all together. And then your horse's immune system goes haywire. It goes bonkers. It totally overreacts. And you have a giant open grotto sore, right?
It starts out teeny, but it's not going to stay teeny.
No. And some of these sores can take months, like 9 to 12 months to totally heal. And it's just because there's like now this little itty bitty piece of a worm living inside your horse's sore. And it just gets out of control with the inflammation and the response of it. So the other really fascinating thing about summer sores is that they can actually also happen without a wound present, because horses like to land in soft mucousy areas, like, around the eyes, around noses, around sheaths. And the summer sore that I saw in California, first one I'd ever seen, was on the inside of a horse's sheath.
Well, that's probably the worst.
And I was like, I felt so bad for this little guy. So bad, because it got so swollen in like no time flat. Well, one, nobody knew there was a sore there, if there even was one. But the next day, like half of his sheath off to one side was swollen so much that he couldn't fully retract. And then you could just kind of see the edge of the summer sore. And when you peeled it back, it was probably about the size of like a 50-cent piece.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was.
That's a bad one. Yeah.
And basically, you have to treat them again using a barrier method. You have got to get the flies away from this. So whatever you can do to wrap up your horse. There's a new product that, actually, it's not. You know what? It's not a new product, but it's a new company that I am going to start working with. They're called Socks for Horses. They make a product called Several Winnies. These are nice because not only are they like full covering on a horse's lower legs, they keep the flies away, and the properties of the silver in the fabric help heal things. But I digress. So you have to take a summer sore and basically create like a castle, a fort around it to keep the flies out. But then you also have to treat the worm infection and the inflammation from the inside. So sometimes you're deworming the horse with, usually it's ivermectin, but honestly, your vet has to be involved with this because it can get so out of control so quickly. Maybe you're doing some anti-inflammatories. Maybe you're putting a dewormer directly on the sore. Again, your vets is going to be the expert on that. But these are tough sores to heal. And I kind of think summer sore might not be the right name for them because they could happen year round. Yeah.
Well, yeah, here in Florida, we can get them year round because we have flying and biting insects year round.
Year round. Yeah.
A lot of horses, though, that have chronic ones, they will look like they heal up over the winter months.
And then boom.
And then they re-erupt in the springtime when the biting flies come back out. Because in the wintertime, we don't have as many. It's not that big a deal. But then in the summer, when they come back out, it's like, oh, look, it's back. That's because it never really healed up to begin with. And I'm on your side. If you suspect your horse has a summer sore, do get veterinary intervention before it gets to be the size of a $50 or larger. I have seen them myself.
They're awful.
2 to 3 inches across.
Yeah, they're awful.
Cosequin ASU joint and hoof pellets contain quality ingredients to support joint and hoof health and leave out the fillers, molasses, and alfalfa, all while delivering the taste horses love. The colors of our ingredients shine through for a difference you can see. Visit CosequinEquine.com.
Today, I went back a little bit in the archive because it's supposed to be 105 in places today, real temperature. And Karen Chatton on the endurance episode, those endurance riders know a little bit about hot horses, talked to Dr. Bullock, and they talked about how to identify heat stress and then what to do when you identify it. So I'm going to replay that because I think it's important that we all hear that right now. It's hot here too. It's almost 100 here. So it's pretty hot everywhere right now. I know you guys are having it too. So let's talk a little bit about heat stress and how to identify it.
We have Dr. Julie Bullock back with us again, and she is an endurance rider and an endurance ride veterinarian. Welcome back to the show, Julie.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Exactly. Okay, so let's maybe just have you tell us a little bit about if our horse is starting to experience heat stress, what are those signs that we need to look for?
Definitely you need to look for an increased heart rate. Failure to recover is a big sign. Increased respiration rate. And for some horses that don't normally pant, that are panting, taking their temperature. If they're over 103, they're definitely heat stressed. Okay. Some horses will, several years ago, we had a really, really cool spring. We had no heat to speak of, and we had some horses come to the Old Dominion, and they were all from the upper Northeast, from like Pennsylvania. And they had to do a really large climb, and it was really, really hot and humid. And I treated 4 horses that day that all cramped in their intercostal muscle in the rib cage just from panting, because they had not, utilized those muscle groups training, because they hadn't had that same kind of challenge.
Oh, right.
So let's see. So things to look for. Definitely, a horse that's hot, a lot of times they won't eat. Say you actually passed the vetting and you went over to your crewing area and your horse is just looking kind of miserable, then you do need to recheck his heart rate, check his temperature, make sure that he didn't heat back up on you, and that he's, you want that. You don't want that look in their eyes where if the flies are hanging on their face and they don't care. That's not a good sign. Definitely all the hydration. I think that we should all be able to basically vet our own horses. We should be able to check our mucous membranes, see if they're dry, make sure our capillary refill is 2 seconds, our jugular, gut sounds. A lot of times your gut sounds will go away when they're hot, because the horse is going to circumvent blood flow to other areas. So it's going to take care of its brain, it's going to take care of its other areas of its body, but it's going to prioritize them. And then eventually, once it starts getting a certain amount of heat exhaustion or dehydration, then it has to start, throwing things out of the boat. Like, okay, well, I don't have enough to go, to my guts, so I'm going to send it over here, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And so it's important to, keep the horse in shade as much as possible and to keep cooling them.
Yes, try to get them out of the sun, keep them in the shade, keep cooling them during their rest period, absolutely. And then when you're competing them, when they're out on trail, try to keep them cool. There is the only downside sometimes to shade and humidity is it's difficult for the water to evaporate off the horse.
Right.
So on the West Coast, everything evaporates really quickly. And it doesn't mean those horses are any less dehydrated, because they really aren't. And you can see the salt just accumulate on their bodies.
Uh-huh.
On the East Coast, the horses never dry. They never dry. They stay wet the entire time, because that water can't evaporate, and that holds the heat in. So it's really important, once that heats up, to keep exchanging it and pulling it off and trying to take that hot water off.
Right. And I found some neat little like squeegees at the dollar store that they're just like the perfect size. They're like 10 inches wide, and they're perfect for, scraping the water off of the horse. And you can clip them right onto your bucket, which makes it handy. Pull up squeegees and being aggressive with the volume of water, if you have it available, that you're putting on. I'll see people take a sponge and it's kind of like dabbing the horse. It's like, no, you need to get in there. I use scoops. I use like laundry detergent scoops or cat litter scoops and buckets, and I pour the water on so I can get on their fat. So for me, it's like NASCAR. I come in, and that's just because I think my attitude is that practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So even if I have a young horse and I'm in no particular hurry, I'm still going to get in there and do it the same way I always, whether I'm trying to win or just trying to finish. I try to keep my pit crewing the same. Get in, get my tack off, get the horse cooled off, blah, blah, blah. Because otherwise it's easy to fall into some kind of complacency and rather than stay at a certain level. Right. Well, this has been really useful information.